Hello everyone and welcome to my video. I'm Logitech and today I want to start with some, let's say, advanced rules. So the first thing I would recommend to you to learn are how chains work at Yugioh. So at Yugioh, chains are how effects resolve. You see, imagine if you, for example, let's say you activate the card Melody of the Awakening Dragon. This card will be chain link 1. So this card and effect will be chain link 1. Now your opponents may activate a trap, quick play spell, or a quick effect or such in response to your activation as chain link 2. What happens then is if your opponents will first resolve their card because they were chain link 2, and then you will also resolve your card. So it is like, yep, the chains are always resolved backwards. Like first chaining 2, then chaining 1. Or if it is higher, then chaining 4, chaining 3, 2, 1. And yeah, that's the most important thing at chains. Also important is there can be cases when multiple effects can appear at the same time. Can happen at the same time. For example, you had a Pendulum Summon, and you have two monsters that have the effect. They do something if they are Pendulum Summoned. Then you can say, okay, you choose which effect you apply first. You can choose which one you want to use as chaining 1 and as chaining 2. And that is a very important thing. You can do something lots of people call chain blocking with that. You see, you can if you say, for example, you have a very important effect among them, then use that as chaining 1 and a less important one as chaining 2, because the opponent won't be able to use cards in response to that chaining 1 effect. They may be able to negate it if it is on the field and they have a card that says, yeah, negate a card on the field. But otherwise, if it is otherwise, they can't do anything to it anymore. Only if they explicitly target it or the whole field. So it protects your effects from interruptions. And so always use the chain links, the lower chain links during simultaneously activating effects as you always use them on the lower chain links, and the higher chain links for the less important ones. Or if or another advantage, another thing I would suggest is if you have two effects. Let's say one lets you search or summon a monster from your deck, and the other is you draw a card. First, use the effect that lets you search or special summon, and as chaining 2, the one that lets you draw, because no, I mean the other way around. So first the one that lets you draw, and then the other one that lets you special summon or search from the deck, because you want the effect that special summons or searches to resolve first, so you won't draw the card you wanted to summon or search. So chaining 1 should be the draw, chaining 2 should be the summon, unless you need to protect it. So it depends on the moment. So you have to decide: do I want to protect that effect from other effects, or do I want to draw a better card maybe because I don't need to can't search it, and I don't draw the card I wanted to search. Okay, that's basically how chains work. And of course, I already explained to you how spell speed works. Again, spell speed 1 are you activate a normal spell, or you activate a normal effect. Spell speed 2 is you activate a quick effect or a trap or a quick play spell. Chaining 3, spell speed 3 are counter traps. You can only react with counter traps. And spell speed 4 are effects that can't be responded to. but they might not be able to react to counter traps unless they're counter traps. But yeah, that's how chains work. Okay, then let's see, what is the next opponent? What's the next topic I want to talk about? If and when effects. Okay, if and when effects are also important for chains. You see, an effect can say, yeah, if this card is summoned, you can do this. Let's say if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can search a spell card. Then it is like, yeah, okay, after the chain resolved and the card was in the grave was sent to the graveyard, on the next chain, you can use that effect. No matter what happened, you can use that effect by activating it on the next chain. But at when effects, it is a bit more complicated. When effects can miss timing. Timing means, in this case, a when effect says, yeah, when this card is sent to the graveyard, you can search a spell card. This means it has to be the card arriving at the graveyard has to be the last thing that happened on the previous chain. If it hasn't arrived as last, but something else happened, like you added a card, then you can't activate this effect because it wasn't the last thing. Also, for example, linking off a monster means the monster is sent to the graveyard and then you summon the link monster, for example. That means the last thing that happened was the summon of the monster and not the monster arriving at the graveyard. So always make sure that if you have when effects, make sure they are the last thing to happen in your chain. And also when effects have to be used first in a chain, you can't use them second because then the last thing that was activated or happened wasn't the thing that had to happen. So you could activate that effect. Okay. And also important is that, yeah, if you, for example, have cost an effect, and an effect can have cost, and you can distinguish the cost by the card saying, you can discard one card, semicolon, that a semicolon always marks that what is in front of it is the cost, and what is behind it is an effect. So if you have an effect, if you have cost, you pay the cost while you activate the card. So like you activate the card, for example at a Melody of the Awakening Dragon, it is like it says discard one card, then you can and after a semicolon it says okay, add to your hand 2 cards. Then that means you activate the card and immediately you have to discard a card. If you have no cards in your hand, you can't activate the card. And then when the card resolves later on, it can happen after some other cards because your opponent chained cards or you chained cards. That means it happens once this card resolves, but the cost is paid as soon as you activate the card effect. Also important is when chains happen, it is like, yeah, okay, for example, you activate on your turn a card or effect. Then you have to ask your opponent, do you want to chain any card's effects to my effect, to my card effect? If they don't, then you can decide if you want to chain something. If not, then you resolve the card. Or if it is your opponent's turn, they have to ask you after they activate an effect or something happened if you want to do something. But otherwise, they have the turn player has the turn priority and can start a chain. And an effect that starts a chain is either you activate a card, or you or something that also starts a chain is either you have a cost, or you have to target a card, or it has a semicolon, or you have in the card effect a colon. Then it means you have an activating effect. If it doesn't have a semicolon, or or a colon in the card effect text, then it isn't an activating effect. It just happens. Unless it is a spell card you activate, then it is an activating effect, of course. But let's say you have a monster on the field. You have for example, a monster in your hand that has the fact that if you use, you can special this card, summon this card if your opponent controls a monster and you don't, like at Cyber Dragon. If it doesn't have a semicolon or colon in the text, it is just a summon. It isn't an effect that activates. You can summon it, and then your opponent can only react to the summon itself, not to the effect that summons it, because it is a so-called inherent summon, or as Konami calls it, an inbuilt summon, or built-in summon. An effect that activates because it has cost, it has a colon, a semicolon, and then summons the monster. It's not an built-in summon. It is a summon that it's like you activate it in your hand, then your opponent can respond before the summon would happen, and can even negate the effect. That's how basically chains work, actually. So yeah, you have effects that can start chains and effects that don't start chains. So yeah, and sometimes effects that add continuous spells or traps don't have that because they don't happen when you activate the card, but they happen when something happens. But they don't activate because if they don't have a semicolon or colon on that sentence, but they just happen. Like every time this and this happens, then immediately do this. Okay. And that is how chains work. So here we have chains. Let's see, what do we have next that's important? Ah, yeah, also important is that some cards have effects that say either you can only activate this card of, let's say, of loot of the you have the effect, for example, at a card here that says, yeah, it is called Melody of Awakening Dragon. You can only activate this card, card once per turn. Once per turn, you can activate this card or effect. That is a so-called soft once per turn. A hard once per turn is the card mentions its card name and says you can only activate Melody of the Awakening Dragon once per turn. That is a hard once per turn. Or also if it says use, it's exactly the same. So a soft once per turn means if the card doesn't mention itself, but only you can activate, once per turn. For example, you can activate once per turn. Then you can activate other copies of the effect of that card as well. That means, for example, if Melody of the Awakening Dragon says, only says once per turn you can, or doesn't have that, then you can say, okay, I activated once, resolve it, and if you have a second copy, you can just activate it again. And it doesn't matter then. If you have a soft once per turn, it means, okay, if it is a continuous spell, for example, or a monster or such, and you used that effect already, you can't activate the effect again unless you have a different copy of the effect, of the monster or spell or trap. Then you can still activate it again, but yeah, not the same copy. And if it is hard once per turn because the card mentions its own name, then you can't activate the card effect again that turn, even if it is a different copy. So if you have two copies of Melody of the Awakening Dragon and says, yeah, you can only activate the Melody of the Awakening Dragon once per turn, then you can only activate that card name once per turn, not overall this copy, just this copy. And something that is also interesting is there are cards that negate card activations or effect activations. And that can be important if you have, for example, a card or effect that says, yeah, you can only activate this card, this effect, or this card once per turn. If they mention itself, for example, or overall, you can only activate this effect once per turn, and your opponent negates the activation. then you can actually use that again, because it never happened. Negating an activation means this effect never happened. This effect basically didn't exist. If the effect, though, says you can only use this effect once per turn, and it is negated, then the effect was still used. It just didn't. It just wasn't activated. But it was used, even when it didn't successfully get used. So, always read if your opponent activates a card that negates your activation. Read if your card has in the text if this you can only use you can only activate, or if you can only or it has you can only use this effect once per turn. That can make a huge difference in duels. A difference, though, is if attacks are negated or summons are negated. Those can't be reused if they are for example, if a normal summon is negated, you don't get another normal summon. Or if an attack is negated, you don't get another attack. Unless your card says it so. So important is cards always have priority over the rules. Like if a rule, if you have a rule, but you have, for example, a card that says, yeah, on this turn you can normal summon 2 monsters instead of 1. Then you can normal summon 2 monsters. It isn't like, yeah, you can activate the card, but still you can only use 1 normal summon. Or if a card says, yeah, normal summon a card, that is an additional normal summon. So everything that says, yeah, do something, that gives you additional summons, for example. So, for example, your normal summon is only used if you don't do it with an effect. It is like you just summon a monster and that's it. You don't activate an effect for that. But yeah, this is how chains work and some of the kind of advanced rules. So, let's see, what is the next topic we can talk about here? We have effects and cost. Also, we have hard ones per turns, use and activate effects, inbuilt summons, chains and chain blocking. Yeah. That's basically it. And yeah, basically if you use all of these rules, you will be able to play the game and also improve it. Always remember, you have to think everything you do. Everything you do at Yugioh, you have to think that yeah, as part of your tactic. Like if it is chain blocking to protect your important effects, or choosing the correct the correct order of your effects can help. Or yeah, also if you have a win effect and really need it, you make sure that its trigger happens last. And yeah, those are some things that I would recommend you to use. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, we are actually done with explanations. If you have any other questions, anything you want to know, just ask away in the comments. I'm always open to make more videos if needed, or just answer that in the comments. I have some experience with tournaments as well, so I know the rules. And I'm also open to helping you learn it, like explaining it directly to you as well. Just ask for it, and maybe we can find a date when I can explain to you on a call or on messages or something. Then we can do it. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please like, subscribe. Also, check out the other playthroughs on my channel if you want to watch more. In the description, find a link to Linktree where you can find all the profiles linked to this channel, including the Twitch channel where you can watch me stream live, and also the polls where you can vote for the next games I'll play, and the players I use on the next eFootball stream. And if you have any wishes, questions, or feedback, then write it in the comments, and I'll make sure to read and reply. And I hope to see you next time again. Have a great time. Bye bye.